This is your Daily 5 for Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. I think I've talked a few times before about the fact that I am a member of Club Twit, the Twit Network's membership tier or whatever service. Service is always such a weird word to use for something like that. But anyway, as part of the perks for that, they do, well, actually, this part is public. It's actually the show recording itself that you would have to wait a month to hear. But they do a book club selection. So every 2 months, I think it's bi-monthly now, they select a book. They basically post a series of books, usually 3 or 4. The community votes on a book, and then that book is read and discussed in whatever their next book club episode is. If you're a member of the club, those are available immediately. I've been on the last 4 or 5, I don't remember. I was also on this one that I'm going to be discussing for the book today. And those, if you're not a member, do come out on their YouTube channel a month after the fact. So the book for this particular episode is titled A Memory of Empire. The author's name, I probably will butcher this, but I'll try not to. Arkady Martine, I think. And the reason I like this book club event is it often has me read books that I probably would not read myself. I wouldn't find them myself. I'd be too busy looking for things that are weird, off the beaten path, bizarre, or Lando's ideas. And this kind of grounds me into reading things that are not necessarily so far off into outer space, because it doesn't all have to be weird and bizarre and, you know, things that nobody's heard of or hasn't read in 50 years. Sometimes modern contemporary books are very good, but again, I don't typically come across them. So this is a nice way to kind of read something that is more along what the mainstream typically reads. And I had a really good time with this book. So this is one of the reasons I really like doing this book club, is so far I've at least enjoyed, or if not enjoyed, well, actually I don't think I've read anything that I didn't like. Everything I've either liked a lot, or at least I've gotten something interesting out of, which is a form of enjoyment for me in itself. And in this book, it is, I won't spoil it. If you watch that episode, there are spoilers, so I'll warn you ahead of time. But I will keep it surface level for anybody who wants to read the book for themselves before watching that episode or reading discussion about it or watching discussion about it. It is essentially, the simplest way to describe it is, imagine Dax from Deep Space Nine gets caught in a Tom Clancy political thriller in space. That is the simplest way to put it, which does not spoil anything, but gives you the basic premise. The main character's name is Mahit, and she has been pressed into immediate service as the new ambassador to, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the name, the Empire. I'm just going to call it the Empire. And in the Empire, it is a very different culture from the one that she grew up in and operates in as an adult. And all ambassadors get a device implanted within themselves that allows them to access essentially the personhood of the previous ambassador. So it is a sentient voice in their head that has all the memories, the personality, the motivations from before, to allow new ambassadors not to simply go in cold to what could be very significant negotiations and cultures that are radically different from their own. The difference in this case is normally there is a long kind of ramp up where you become acquainted with your new, the voice in your head, but the previous ambassador never returned from the Empire. And so she has to figure out what is going on and navigate with an inexperienced version of the previous ambassador. Everything else more or less operates as a kind of classic political intrigue mystery thriller. Imagine a Cold War story, where there's a person who's been thrust into the middle of things where they don't know who all the players are, they don't know what everybody's about, they don't know who's telling the truth, who's lying, who's doing both, and they have to figure out who to align themselves with and whether they're going to support any of the goals of the people who are working for or against them. That's the basic setup. Now, I will say it's not the most complex mystery that I've ever read. You will probably figure out more or less pretty quickly what's going on. It's basically spelled out for you, but still, I won't say anything about it. But the characters are really well written. I like the idea of the differences in culture and the way that there's clashes where there's, differences in, say, how a body is buried, in how words are used, in how food is consumed. There's just these really nice little pieces of kind of world building that happen, on top of the fact that the characters are often very enjoyable and funny and seem like they're well fleshed out. So again, if you're coming for a complex mystery, you might be a little bit let down, but I like Cold War stories, and a Cold War story in space is automatically appealing. And so for that reason, along with many others, I had a great time with A Memory of Empire. So if it sounds interesting to you, read it. It's a good time, and you'll probably have fun with it. Later.